Well, here we are again. I was running out of throat and thoughts on the last recording, which wasn't terribly long ago, all of about 5 minutes. And but I am a little inspired, so I'm going to keep going. I want to, as of this recording, I haven't made this live yet, and I really want to get it up. In fact, I will work, if I can get this one done, I will work on getting this up. That puts me 4 or 5 hours ahead of listening schedule, so maybe I can maintain it, that there's always something fresh and new. But where I left off, now you're probably going to hear me take a drink of water because I just flat out need to. That's better. In fact, I'm going to leave the cap off of that for easy access. Anyways, I was in second grade when I left off, and of course describing some of my silliness at the time. But I don't have, well, I have a few more memories of second grade, but I can refer back to some of those times and people later. There were some other friends that I made there. There were, in a town of 3,000 to 5,000 people, the kids that you started out with that were there clear up till you graduated, there was only a handful of us. So many came and went along the way. A couple were held back. A couple we inherited from the older class getting held back. So there was a core of us, you might say, and so these people could probably pop up in every grade, every memory I have, but by second grade I was starting to make some longer term friends, and well, we had our summer. My summer probably consisted of just playing with my truck still at that point in time, and spending time at my oldest sister's house, which I don't remember what or why I spent a lot of time there, but I literally lived there for quite a while. In fact, it became more home to be there than it did to be at my own house. I don't know why. It was just me. But I really don't know if I was there to help out with babies, or I mean, I know that was kind of one of the reasons I was there later on, when a couple of my nephews were born. I was told, you can stay over there and help out. Okay, what was helping out? It was just running diapers or something. It certainly wasn't like I was raising kids or anything, so I'm not entirely certain. But whatever the case, I rode in third grade is about the time that it started, because I changed schools, and the school was 5-6 blocks from her house, and I walked to school and walked home every day from there, and that's what I did for whatever reason. So going into third grade, I don't remember who my friend was. Who was my little partner in crime at that point? Maybe it'll come to me later, but we had classrooms. Now, this was a square school. It was very square, and it had 3 wings to it. There was 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade wing, and they were all separated by little courtyards. And then they all merged together at one end to form where the gym was, and where the library was, and where the office was. Now, some significant things happened to me in third grade. I loved going to the library. That's where I read my very first novel, checking it out and taking it home. It was a book called Rattlesnake Run, and I actually bought that a few years ago and haven't reread it, but I've had it in the house, so I intend to reread it. But there was that, and there was the reading of that book, finding out a whole new level of trouble. And these, because this class was there, this school was square. You would go, typically to go into your class, you would go in from the inside hallway, through the courtyard into the inside hallway when you got off the bus, and then every classroom had its own exit. It was just a big metal door that opened up to the schoolyard, the playground. So normally, and they locked. When you closed it, it locked. So it was an outdoor really only, unless somebody was there to let you in. So you would exit for recess out that door directly into the playground, and come back in through the entrance that was attached to the courtyard area, and that was just life. Well, my teacher's name was Mr. Connell, and I want to say his first name was Steve, but I'm not sure. Anyways, because of course you didn't call them by their first name, it was Mr. Connell, and his name definitely sticks in my mind because it wasn't so far off from my own name. And he was from Tacoma. He was his first year there, and he talked about Tacoma, which to me was just some mythical place. But now that year, my dad, who had worked at the county as a mechanic, I believe it was sometime that year, possibly earlier, maybe when I was in second grade, but it was during the warm months. He quit his job, which seemed crazy at the time, because we had benefits. I was one of the few kids that got to go to the dentist. I'm not saying that all the kids had rotten teeth or anything, but things like dental plans, they weren't popular, or they popular, sure, but they weren't common. So not everybody got to go to the dentist. Not everybody got to would go to the doctor. And of course, back then, the doctor meant you would pay like $35 at the window for just about any service that you went for. And of course, we were still in the ages of getting our shots back then too. But anyways, sometime during that time frame, my dad had quit his job at the county for I don't know what reason. I don't know if he had a dispute with somebody or if he just wanted to break off on his own. I really don't know. But he had bought a backhoe and possibly a dump truck from a guy named Kenny Williams. And I remember being at Kenny Williams' house, because anywhere I was my dad's charge. I was his problem when I was at home for whatever reason. So I was sent off to work with my dad, which usually just meant sitting in the truck reading or something like that. But during this transitional phase of buying this business, we spent a lot of time at Kenny Williams' house. It was a mobile home, and it was somewhere out there in the country, and I couldn't even point out where today. Yeah, actually I could. I think I could find it, or find where it once was. Anyways, so we're at Kenny Williams' house, and my dad's buying this deal, and so I went into third grade with my dad being a backhoe guy. I didn't know what excavator meant at that point, excavation, but I believe it was part of his business name. And we got, at that point, a phone. We had never had a phone up until that point. And I do remember the phone man coming out and wiring in a new phone. We had no phone access prior to that, except at my grandpa's house, which was up the road a little bit. And if something important needed to be said to somebody else, we would go there and use the phone. I remember being there in his living room to make a phone call, probably to my sister or something. I don't know. It was always at my mother's instructions, but um, go in there and my grandpa was a bit of a drinker, or actually a lot of a drinker, and he was well known for getting drunk, coming out of his house in his underwear and shooting at the power lines at imaginary birds. And I was always a little timid about that because one time my sister and I walked up there. My mom told us to go call somebody or go borrow a can of corn or something, I don't know, from my grandpa. And we went in there, and he wasn't. It was a very small house. It was one bedroom, one kitchen, one living room, and a bathroom in the back. Well, no, there was another bedroom back there too, but I think that's where he kept his freezer. I do remember when we would butcher an animal or have a crop of in the garden or something, or he did, that there was frozen food in there, and sometimes we would go get it. But anyways, he wasn't there. But Grandpa always had candy. He would be sitting in his chair 9 out of 10 times, and watching television. And he was old. My grandpa was born in 1901, so when I was seeing him as a kid, he was already 70 plus years old, well on his way towards 80. And so, anyways, we walked in, and he wasn't in his chair watching the television, and we were there to do something. I don't remember what it was. Maybe I just don't remember. But anyways, we I do remember rattling some papers. I think we figured he was sleeping. We wanted to wake him up. I'm pretty sure that's it, because whatever it is we were doing, we weren't going to be able to do without his permission. Whether it was use the phone or get something out of the freezer, I don't know. But he was lying in bed drunk, and he scared us. He scared my sister and myself so bad because who is that? What do you want? It's us, Grandpa. You're stealing my candy. You get the hell out of my candy. You get out of that candy. I know you're stealing it. And we were just terrified. And we thought he was, because we had heard of him coming out and shooting and stuff. And maybe that wasn't even it. Maybe it was just the authority figure or the accusation. But we were flat out terrified. And we took off out of there and went home and told my mom, And I remember her walking up there to confront Grandpa. But then her brother showed up. That was my mom's dad. And her mom lived clear across the state. They had some kind of split. I don't know what or why or anything else. But they had some kind of split. And he lived there, and she lived on the other side with my mom's sister. And then at one point, my mom's brother came to town, and there was some kind of a little talk about him. His name was Bob, and he had this wife, Beth, but it seems like she was really young and he was old, or so. I don't remember what the controversy was there exactly, but they had a camp trailer, and I was just flat out amazed by camp trailers. I had never seen one before. It was just new to me, cool to me. It's a house pulled by a truck. Wow. And they were staying there on my grandpa's land at one point, and I remember going in there and just oohing and awing over this camp trailer, and going into the bathroom, which also was the first time. Now, this is probably back towards first or second grade, to be honest, but it comes to mind, so we'll talk about it. Going into the bathroom, and it had a chain lock on it, which I had never seen in my life. And I figured out how to put the chain on the door from inside, and not apparently seeing or understanding how it went in, was the same way that it would come out. And so I went to open the door. It's chained shut with that little chain, and just freaking out. Probably because I figured I was going to get in trouble for it more than anything, but crying and yelling and screaming, and Bob or his sister or my grandpa, more than one person was in there trying to explain to me to close the door and put the chain, go slide it all the way the other way, and it would pop right out. But I was terrified of closing the door like it was going to be some eternal prison or something, and they had to close the door forcefully, and I'm crying and everything. I mean, I'm very young at this point, but so obviously it was before third grade. I think at third grade I would have had that figured out, but anyways, eventually I got it off, and ever since then I've not been a big fan of chain locks. Not to mention realizing how useless they are. Anybody who weighs over 100 pounds can break through one of those easily enough. But if you think a chain's going to help you, it's not. Anyways, going back to third grade, my eyesight had started failing in second grade, but I didn't, and I had went to an eye doctor. Barmore was his name. That was his last name, and he seemed kind of mean to me, and they issued me glasses. My dad still worked for the county when I went there, and so I was able to get the prescription glasses easily enough. It wasn't a big burden, but I wouldn't wear them. It was kind of like the piano lessons thing. I flat out wouldn't wear them no matter what. And actually my eyes in second grade weren't so bad that I couldn't function. I could still read the board. My teacher had printed up these wanted signs with some of the kids in the class, like Old West wanted signs, and put our names on them. And I could remember I could see mine. It was up there. But I had to stand maybe in front of, maybe the front row. But by third grade, it had happened. They had gone downhill so bad. I went back to the eye doctor in third grade because we had vision screening in the classroom. Every year somebody would come in and do eye testing and hearing tests and all that such and such. And so going back to the eye doctor in third grade and him telling me that, now I've never even looked this up, but he said your prescription, and I do remember this specifically, is 22 100ths, and him saying that's legally blind and you have to wear your glasses. How could you not have worn your glasses? And he was kind of berating me. I really disliked the man. I really just hated him, in fact. And he issued me another pair of glasses. Now, these were, in the course of a year's worth of school, the thickness of the glasses had just like tripled. They were just these big, heavy honking things. And he issued me the glasses, and I still would not wear them. I did all of my learning from that point on, and I am not joking, independently, clear up until probably my 11th or 12th grade in high school. I would have been one or the other. I'm thinking maybe the tail end of 11th grade, actually. I finally got contact lenses. Up until that point, I was 100% uncorrected vision, even driving. There's some funny stories about that coming up. But anyways, third grade, again, I will not wear these glasses. I wanted to sit in the back of the room because I could do my own thing. I couldn't see the board anyways from the front or the back. So what did it matter? I could listen in, and whatever I could. I had a very good memory. So what? And I read a lot. I read ferocious amounts of books, cereal boxes, books, television, anything I could get my eyes on to read. I was all over it. So and I had a good memory. So it wasn't that terribly hard to pass third, fourth, fifth, sixth grade, all of them, with fairly decent grades if I wanted it. I had developed this kind of this tradition of if I liked the teacher, I would seek to do well. If I didn't like the teacher, I would do very poorly. So in third grade, my overall grades, I didn't like Mr. Connell. He always grabbed me by the shoulder when I was in trouble, and I hated that. He always give that big, firm shoulder squeeze. And we were switching classes by then. We were getting primed and ready for alternate teachers because by the time you got to sixth grade, you spent your day switching classes. So we were kind of getting ready for that, and I would go over to Mrs. Mills' class for English, and I liked her, so I got a good grade out of her. I can't remember the other class I went to. I don't know, but anyways, so my eyesight was declining rapidly. I wouldn't wear my glasses. Essentially, my days in school were spent kind of just doing my own thing in the back of the class. And he came to accept that. I was the projector kid when the projector came in because it was movie time. This isn't a tape playing in a machine on a portable TV. This isn't some streaming computer screen. This was a big reel-to-reel projector where you attached the projector on the film on one side and you had an empty reel on the other. It went through the machine, projected onto a screen in the front of the classroom, and the sound came out of the projector. And I just wanted to be the projector kid so bad, and he let me. And when it was movie time or film time, whatever, I got to run the projector, and I absolutely loved it. So I would do that. I would be good. That was probably his incentive program for me. Be good, just so you could run the projector. Okay, you got it. Other than that, though, he kind of let me do my own thing in the back because he knew I just wasn't tuning in. I don't know that he knew that I couldn't see, but because he wasn't a bad guy, he was just a teacher, and I was a rotten kid at that point. And behavior-wise, my dad was trying to get business cards made, and he had all these posters of backhoes and stuff, and I stole those from my dad or begged him or snuck him or something, I don't know, and I brought him out of school, and I taped him around my desk and made myself this little fort, and I would sit in my fort during class, and the teacher just kind of turned a blind eye, hey, I wasn't bugging anybody else, I could sit in my fort, and sitting in the back of the room, there was a gap between the last row of desks and the exit door. There was this kind of a little common area back there, and every classroom had a sink in it, for example, and that was back there, and I would sit back there, and there was another girl that was back there, and she was always gluing her hands. We had Elmer's glue. That was certainly a staple of being in school, was plenty of Elmer's glue around. So she taught me that. Glue, hold your hand out, smear glue all over it, wait for it to dry, and then peel it off, and it would have all your fingerprints on it and everything. That was just absolutely amazing to me. She also taught me how to pull the wings off of flies and watch them run around, because it didn't kill them. They just couldn't fly anymore. Her name was Mary, and I was sometimes at that point in my life, normally I was living with my oldest sister, but sometimes I would go and stay with my next oldest sister, the one that had lived in the house when I was younger, and that had been kind of in trouble of some sort. And in the oldest sister's house, it was very conservative and religious. We were a Christian family, and the tradition was strong in my oldest sister's house. However, in my next oldest sister's house, it was loose, and I was exposed to many non-Christian things in that house. But the influences were there, and I craved being back there because I liked trouble. And but I didn't get to go there very often. It was where I wanted to be, and that's where my older sister would get to spend the night if she was going to spend the night anywhere. Was at my next oldest sister's house. I mean, I had 4 sisters, so it's kind of hard to keep them all straight. But there was oldest, next oldest, the one that was 4 years older than me, and then there was one that was 4 years younger than me. But anyways, she went to one house, I went to the other, and on occasion I'd get to go to that house and get exposed to the naughty things. Her husband had, well, let's just say that there was plenty of things there that wouldn't have been acceptable in my oldest sister's house, or even my parents' house for that matter. And I remember lining up for the buses in 3rd grade to be let out and singing little naughty songs, and my teacher, I just remember him just shaking his head at me like he just didn't know what to do. And here's the kid that runs a projector, and yet he and sits in the back of the room gluing his hands and singing naughty little songs, and at the same time takes first place in the spelling contest every single time we have it. So I don't know what the guy thought of me, but whatever the case, I was also in trouble on the playground too. And this is not about me being in trouble. It's just what's coming to mind as I talk. You get started down that little path right there. There were plenty of other things in life besides getting in trouble. It's just those things that stand out. We had our 3rd grade wing, and at the other end was the 5th graders. And when you played on the playground at recess, you kind of stuck to your own zone. Like on our end of the playground, on our side, we had certain types of bars and everything for climbing and playing around on that you wouldn't find on the other end. But me and my friend, who I still cannot think of who was my little cohort, we ventured into 5th grade territory, and there were these girls, and there were 3 of them. Now you got to remember, this is a small town in 70s America where people were definitely different. Boys were tougher, and girls, although with all my crying stories, you wouldn't know that. And oh, girls were more tomboyish for sure. And to see a fight, for example, on the playground between a boy and a girl was not unusual. Not common, but not unusual. And so we were little smart alecks, me and my friend. One of these days I'm going to remember who that was. Oh, was his name Alan? No, Greg. Oh, jeez. Anyways, we were smart alecks, and we ventured into 5th grade territory and instantly caught the negative attention of these three girls that were palling around together, and we were making fun of them. And they didn't take too well to it, and they were shoving us around and everything. And so, of course, we just ran from them because they were larger than us and older than us and girls on top of it. So we just, ran away. And it kind of turned into this war, though. And they started coming down to our area looking for us. And we didn't, we felt like we were defending our turf, kind of a thing. We were, not to mention on our side was where the hopscotch circles or squares were painted onto the pavement. And so that did bring down quite a few girls anyways. Hopscotch was a thing back then. I don't know that kids even these days even know what that is. But whatever the case, they were showing up on our end, and which heightened the war even more. And now these girls, punching was not above them. So we're smart mouth little third graders, and they're big tough fifth graders, and there's three of them and two of us, and they had no problem punching on us and such. So we honestly felt at one point, I do remember feeling like we are defending ourselves now. It didn't have to be physical, but it was. And to the point where it came to a head when now I mentioned these doors that open up from the classrooms directly onto the playground, these big metal doors. Well, they had a latch on them, a hook on the outside, and this square bar, big pipe type looking bar thing that stood by each exit. So it was attached into the ground. It was like a rail. It went up, across, and came back down. Both ends of it were sunk into the ground, probably concreted in, and you could take these big heavy doors that not only were they heavy, but they had the big arm thing up on top that was like a hydraulic cylinder or something, or spring loaded, I don't know. But it would close the door automatically. You just so you'd walk out the door and let go, and it would close itself. So the only way to keep it open, which we kept it open during the spring and summer and beginning of the summer and such. When it was warm outside, and you would open the door, push it against the big backstop bar thing, and then there was a little hook on it, and you would hook it to the bar. Well, on this particular day, I do remember that her name was Jenny or Ginny. I don't remember the names of the other, except I do remember the last name of one of the girls, and it was Butler. And that's probably something we made fun of, Butler. But, hey, Butler, that kind of thing. But her parents knew my parents. My dad did work for them. He was full-blown in business by that point, and I do remember her threatening to tell her parents because she knew my parents knew her parents. And there was going to be something happen from that. But one day the Ginny girl was standing on the opposite side of that rail. The door itself was closed, and I used that rail as a where I grabbed like a trapeze bar or something, where you grab your hands on the bar and then swing, and I grabbed it and launched through, and my feet were together and they met her body at the right at her ankle, and it anyway ended up breaking her ankle. And I didn't get in trouble for that at home. I may have gotten disciplined at school, but that girl was in a cast or a brace of some sort for quite a while after that. And that seemed to be, I think that it must have gotten out, and we defended ourselves saying they've been picking on us. And they, of course, said all they do is make fun of us. And we were ordered to just stay away from each other. She got a cast or a brace or something. And that was the end of the war, especially because the school year ended. They went on to middle school. And I don't know that I saw her again clear until high school. But whatever the case, that was a big occurrence of my third grade year. And I seem to do go down these trouble roads a lot, but they're the things that stick out in my mind. Seeing a kid whose name was Doug get put out in the hall in third grade was funny to me, because up until then it was go stand in the corner. And he was also a troublemaker, but he was not my partner in crime on that girl thing. That much I do know. He was very worldly, and I remember him getting thrown out into the hall once again. And me, I was kind of jealous. I want to get put out in the hall because everybody thinks he's so cool. For third graders, that's a big deal. And I do remember him walking out again to be put out in the hall, and he's walking past the front of the classroom, and he looks at the classroom, and he says, "Ciao." And I was like, I didn't know what that meant. But he apparently did. And everybody, ooh, he's so cool. And so he's put out in the hall. I'm jealous. And I just usually got the shoulder grab, and that was about it. But anyways, I did get my first hack, as it was called, in third grade. Me and my friends, John and Todd was the other friend's name. We were at library, and we were screwing up pretty good in there. And I do remember what we were laughing about. It was about a certain country named Niger in Africa on the map. And we were giggling about that nonstop. And the librarian, I want to say her name was Forsberg. She sent us down to the office. Go sit in the office. You can't be quiet in here. Go be loud in the office. Okay. So we went from the library down to the office, and there was a pencil machine there, and we were sitting next to the pencil machine in these chairs. And the pencil machine, of course, was super cool. And it was filled with football teams, pencils with football teams on them, which I had no interest in football. I didn't even know what football was or professional teams. It certainly wasn't something that was watched in my house. But I do remember always wanting to get the Miami Dolphins. There's something about the silver and the teal color, I think it was, and the little dolphin on the pencil. Everybody else wanted the Dallas Cowboys, but I wanted a Miami Dolphins pencil, and they were 25 cents. You put your quarter in the machine and push the little slot and see what pencil you got. And anyway, so we're sitting next to these things, this machine, and me and no, it wasn't John. It was me. It was Travis was his name. Wait, was it? Oh man, now I'm confusing myself. Who was in that office with me? I think it was, yes. It was Travis, Todd, and myself. Or was it John? Anyways, okay, I know that Travis was one of the other kids there. And he was a big, old, loud, poor influence on me. Any naughtiness I had, he had it times 5, which, of course, upped my game. And anyways, we're sitting in the office, and the principal now it was Mr. YAWN, YAHN, and of course we would say Mr. And act like we were yawning. when we referred to him, and he was in his office, and what was the secretary's name? Receptionist, whatever, Mrs. Something, and she we kept it up. We were being loud and rambunctious and making fun of kids buying pencils and all kinds of stuff. And so when Mr. YAWN came out of his office at one point, he said, "What are these three here for?" And she said, "Well, they were sent here from the library and told to come down here and wait it out." And the bell had rung, and he said, "Well, what about him?" And she said, "Well, that one there," and it was the kid. It was either John or Todd, that I can't remember which one was there. I think it was Todd. She said, "He's been pretty good. He's learned his lesson." So Mr. YAWN says, "You can go back to class." So Todd he's out of there. Now there's just me and Travis sitting there. And he says, "And these two? Well, I don't think they've learned their lesson very well. They brought their problem down here. You two come in here." And we go into his office, and he calls in who? Mr. Miller, my old PE teacher. That's who. That's right. Mr. Miller was the witness. Because when you administered corporal punishment, you had to have a witness. And that's exactly what he did. And the other kid went first, and he reached into his closet and had a paddle in there, and it was a long wooden paddle thing, and he said, "Bend over and grab your ankles." And I watched Travis get his one single hack, as it was referred to, and then I got mine, and we walked back to class together, trying very hard not to cry, and pulling the old "that didn't hurt" thing, but both of us were walking very tenderly at that point, and I never took it to that point ever again. I never pushed my behavior. I learned my lesson on that one, that if I was not going to go to the office, I would get in trouble in class, 3rd, 4th, 5th grade, but I would not push it to the office. And I also knew that library was not the place to screw up, because she didn't say go out in the hall. She didn't say go to the corner or anything of the sort. She was go to the office. The teachers that we had, our main teachers, now they were more forgiving. They didn't use the office as punishment. So as time went by, I figured out exactly where the fine line was to ride. And it certainly was not anything to do with that office or Mr. YAWN and his paddle stick, because that hurt. And I didn't tell anybody. I didn't go home and tell my mom or dad. Oh, no way. It's funny because in my 20s, I kind of became friends with Mr. YAWN again. I hadn't seen him. I didn't even know he was still alive. And circumstances being what they were, I kind of got to know him again, and I'd always bring that up to him. And he didn't even remember it. He was old and retired by then, and he didn't even, who knows how many he gave through the years, but I'll tell you what, it really straightened me out. Not with my behavior, again, but with knowing where to draw the line. And I wouldn't cross that line again till 6th grade. But anyways, so that was 3rd grade. I also learned to play chess that year from my uncle. Taught me. And I really enjoyed chess because I could see it, number one. It was close up. I could see the board. And number two, it was just strategy and very interesting and something new. My horizons were expanding a little bit, and I became a pretty good chess player. But third grade, third grade was fun for me. I went on to fourth grade, same school, different teacher. In fourth grade, my teacher was Mrs. Shilkett. Oh, by the way, my second grade teacher was Mrs. O'Halloran. I never mentioned that. But third grade was Mrs. Shilkett. Uh, And I remember that everybody called her Mrs. Skillet because the H looked almost like a K, and it was easier to pronounce just to say Skillet instead of Shilkett. But she she really took a liking to me, and I rarely got in trouble in there. So I always was going off to please her. Now in fourth grade we didn't switch classes, even though the rest of fourth grade did. And the reason was we had a mixed classroom. There was an overabundance of third graders that year and an underabundance or under whatever of or lack of abundance or lack of numbers of fourth graders. So I was put into a classroom where we had half of it was third graders and half of it was fourth graders. I continued to be friends with Travis, who was just an absolute poor influence on me. I continued to stay at my sister's house and try to stay up past 8 or 8:30 whenever my bedtime was, and she adhered to the rules. So I remember that era, watching shows like when the original Battlestar Galactica came out. I remember watching the '76 Olympics from there. And there was a show called Baba Black Sheep that I always tried to get her to let me stay up and watch. She had at least 2 kids by then. And Mrs. Shilkett's class was fairly interesting. I made some friends with the kids below me and then more of my own age. John was my best friend at that point, and he was and a different. Oh, there was Travis, John, me, and Todd were the best of friends, but then there was a couple of younger age kids that joined our little group. Perry was one of them, and I don't remember who else, but we ran around and did our thing and hung out in class and learned about whatever. Now I remember that's when we learned our times tables, as they were called, or multiplication, but we just said times tables. And Mrs. Shilkett had a 2-page sheet of 2 or 3-page sheet of all the times tables. And you had to you could take this test. She had it so you could challenge it anytime, and she would run a timer, and if you could get the whole test done correctly under a certain amount of time, I don't remember if it was 3 minutes or 5 minutes or whatever it was, you could pick a reward from her cabinet. And I saw that big glistening Three Musketeers up there. And I wanted it so bad that I took the time to study my times tables so that I could be the first one in that class to win. And John and I took it on the same day. We challenged it together. And I remember sitting at the table, and the whole class was watching, and I got accused of cheating, or I had been the first time I took it, because I had memorized everything, and I was saying them out loud to myself: 7 times 6, 8 times 7, 5 times 9, and I was saying it to myself, just under my own breath. I wasn't cheating. It was just the way that I had memorized them, and I was saying it out loud as I took it. So the test was stopped, and she addressed this idea that I was cheating, to which I said, no, I was not. It's just how I learned them. So she restarted it, and I went through it. I tried to keep my mouth quiet. Anyways, I blazed through that test. Absolutely shattered the time. This had nothing to do with math. This was all about a Three Musketeers. And absolutely shattered the time that it took. He also passed it that day. He was a little bit behind me. And we both got our rewards. Now, I don't remember what he picked. I picked that Three Musketeers that I craved, coveted. I downright was obsessed with getting that Three Musketeers. And because, we didn't get candy bars as kids. What we got is grocery day came, and there might be a bag of candy bought. Well, the bag of candy was not a candy bar. It was nut clusters or jelly beans or gumdrops or something like that. Very boring candy in comparison to an entire candy bar all to yourself. So this was like, the holy grail of pigdom to me of being able to consume sugar and fat all in one, all to myself. And I won that, and I picked that Three Musketeers, and I was just wanting to eat that. And she said, you have to wait till lunch. And I said, what? Oh, yes. Oh, yeah, you're not going to eat that now. You can eat that after you eat your lunch. Oh, man. So I'm standing in the lunch line, and I had been holding this candy bar, this Three Musketeers, which was an average size candy bar. There were no king size candy bars back then. America hadn't gotten quite that fat yet. And so it was a standard size candy bar, and I'm holding it in my hand, and of course my body heat is softening it up, and I notice that it's kind of soft in there. So I'm standing in line to the cafeteria, and I peeled off a corner of the candy bar wrapper. And I'm holding the candy bar in my hand, squeezing it out the hole into my mouth, taking these little samples of it, of this half-melted candy bar. And doing that, eating my lunch, of course finishing the, by then, probably gooey, massive, nasty mess. But, that teacher, she didn't shake her head in bewilderment at me like Mr. Connell did. She took it all in stride. She was probably more seasoned. I believe he was a new teacher, and she had been around a while. So she handled me a lot easier, and Travis too. Way easier than he had. And without the discipline. I don't remember being put out in the hall. I don't remember being disciplined in that class. And I remember wanting to please her too. She was very nice. She was funny. I remember there was snow coming down and such, and we were getting our stuff together to go home. And I had my mom had given me this I don't know what, this parka. Now everybody else, the kids wore like shorter jackets, no hood. It was more of a, fashion and trends and style were just creeping up on us in fourth grade. And of course I wanted to be dressed like the other kids, the cool kids, whatever. And my mom had bought me this big silly parka with this big fur-lined hood, or the rimmed, and it was greenish in color, and it was orange on the inside, like bright orange. And I was forced to wear that thing, and I usually, what I did is I wadded it up and carried it because I didn't like it. I hated it. I would rather be cold than wear that parka, but that particular day it was snowing outside, and probably some wind. And she made me put it on, and I remember her zipping it up and then snapping the buttons across the zipper and then tying the hood off. I looked like some little Eskimo or something. And making me wear my parka out to the bus because you had to walk. The buses like before they would ring the school and you'd get on your appropriate bus, and mine was clear down at the far corner, and so I had to walk all the way across the playground to get to my bus. And she bundled me all up in that thing. That brings to mind that corner of the playground. There was this little cove of planted trees down there. And it makes me wonder if my little partner in crime wasn't Billy Whiteside in 3rd grade against those girls. Because he was a smart-mouthed little brat too. He was a very small kid too. He was very thin and short. Jeez, it may have been him that ran around with me making fun of those girls. Anyways, 4th grade was really not eventful. I didn't get into any major trouble. I did okay grade-wise. I don't have a report card anymore that I know of. But she handled me pretty well in that class, and she had a little teacher's assistant. I remember her name was Miss Ryan. And one more thing I learned in 4th grade from Travis, of course, is he had a comic book, or maybe it was a Mad magazine. I don't remember what it was. But he had something he wasn't supposed to have. And he taught me to hold your textbook, because the teacher was always in the front of the room, including even her desk was in the front of the room, so anything facing the back of the room she couldn't see. So if you held your book up and acted like you were reading your textbook, you could insert your comic book or whatever inside of that. And I remember thinking, he's not one of those book kids. He doesn't sit and read his textbook, his math book, or whatever the book was, his science book, who knows what it was. And sure enough, he was the one that showed me that he was, I think it was a Mad magazine, but I wouldn't swear to that. Anyways, he showed me the little trick, and so of course I started trying it out too. And he also showed me the trick of getting a coat with the inside pocket. And that really, really became a thing for me in middle school later on, was making sure I had an inside pocket. Now for me, it was normally a coat about that time was you could keep a paperback book in there. And I was in love with reading, and so that's where I always kept my book. I would read on the bus sometimes, but not normally, because something about reading on the bus always turned my stomach and made me sick to my stomach. So that wasn't something I did very often. Probably had, those old buses back then, they were diesel fumes and the whole 9 yards inside, so who knows, but never really did much reading. But I was always trying to slip my book out and read. But he introduced me to the inside pocket. I didn't have a coat with an inside pocket. I was jealous of his, but now he that's where he kept his little Mad magazine or something, or who knows what he was sneaking around doing. He was definitely an out of control kid. I think he was I think his mom was a single parent, and that's something you didn't see back then very often, was divorced parents. You never heard of it. You rarely saw it, but usually kids had 2 parents in the house in a home that they owned. There was rentals were not a big thing, at least not where I grew up. Maybe in larger cities they were, but and as far as single parents too. But divorce was not a common thing by any stretch of the imagination. It was families, and usually the kids that were the out of control brats. There was a lot of them were with single parents. I knew enough. I remember another kid named Steve. He was completely out of control, but his dad had died when he was when we were second or third grade, somewhere in there, fourth grade maybe. I don't know. Um, he ended up getting held back over it and just was completely out of control. I don't know if he cleared through middle school and high school and everything. I don't know if he ever got his life together. I haven't personally seen him in a long, long time. But anyways, Travis was definitely a bad influence on me. He made me more worldly than I should have been. And fourth grade was a pretty good experience. I really did enjoy it. By that time, my dad was in full swing with his little excavation business, and the summers I spent working. I mean, I was absolutely infatuated with running the backhoe and such. He would let me play on it. He didn't care. I was driving a couple of trucks by then. I could drive and I could shift gears, fourth, fifth grade, no problem. He would let me get on the backhoe and dig holes and out in the field, no problem. It was all just, I was infatuated with it. I loved going out to work with him, watching the backhoe work. I could sit by the sidelines and watch him dig a basement or a pipeline or something. And then he got into blasting because he found that digging pipelines for farmers and such involved getting into a lot of rock. So he expanded a little bit and got into drilling and blasting. So I was out there in fourth, fifth grade learning how to work dynamite with him. I wasn't old enough at that point to run an air hammer because, the hammer itself is going to weigh 70, 80 pounds. And then the drill still and drilling rock and everything by hand. It wasn't an easy task. That came later on, though. And but I would help him lay out primacord and set the blast, tie the dynamite. Here I am, fourth grade, handling dynamite. And it was definitely not that. For me, it was like no big deal. But to talk about it at school was like, ooh, you. So when sixth grade came around, I know this is jumping ahead a little bit, but some kids stole some blasting caps from a construction site, and we're off setting them off like firecrackers in the schoolyard. I was like, big deal. I've been dealing with those for years now. It's nothing new to me. But that's how I spent my summer, working with my dad. I spent every summer like that, but the big thing about dad was a glutton like I was. He'd raised me well. So when it came lunchtime, we didn't take lunch with us. We went down to the store, the little store out in the middle of the country, and we'd pull in there and we'd get the microwavable sandwiches. Microwaves were just coming on, and you really only saw them in schools or maybe cafeterias somewhere, something like that. And they didn't have timers on them. They had A, B, C, D, at least in the stores. So you would have to pick out the sandwich you wanted, pull it out. You'd tear open the package a little bit, and then you'd look on the front. It would have A, B, C, or D, and you would set the microwave to that, which was, an allotted time. And I always chose the sub sandwich, the meat and cheese, and put lots of mustard on it. And we'd go back and get us a pop. And then Dad was always big on buying a box of cookies or donuts. So we would gorge ourselves on hot sandwiches and a candy bar or a donut or a box of cookies or something, and go back to the work site. So There were great advantages to going out with Dad. Plus, I was away from the house. I didn't have to deal with my mom. I didn't have to deal with my little sister at that point. I just went and did my own thing with my dad. And those were good times, and I have a lot of great memories from that. Maybe I can revisit some of those. Okay, I'm out on this one.